Okay, so good evening to everyone from around the world, from Israel, from United States, from England, from Germany. These are the countries I know. There's another country you can say now. And we are in our third meeting of Gunzenhausen Descendants. Representative from Germany is Matthias, but other people cannot join us because it's like the major time of vacation in Germany now. So 2-3 weeks you cannot talk to anyone. Our agenda for tonight is, I'll introduce you to Erez Katz, Mr. Erez Katz. He was the representative of IDF in Berlin. He used to live 4 years in Berlin. And apart from his job, from his position as a representative of IDF, he made his own research about the way Germans and Germany commemorate the Holocaust. So we'll have like a short lecture of 15 or 20 minutes by Erez Katz. And after that, anyone who wants to reply or to share some feelings or thoughts about his presentation can do that. After that, we'll have some announcements that I will say, and any other subjects that any one of you wants to share with all of us, it's also an option. We might also hear the story of Eva. Eva is connected. Last meeting, we talked about 2 families that went to India and Kenya from Gunzenhausen, and we asked, who are they? So we have at least one of the answers. So Eva's family, she is the one who went from Gunzenhausen to Kenya. So it's very interesting to hear shortly the story of the family and Eva herself. So welcome Eva to our meeting. And let's start with Erez. Erez is a new friend of mine. Lives here in Israel, not far from my house, 30 or 40 minutes. And he will share with us his knowledge, his idea or subject that he made an own research about the German and their way of commemoration. And please, Erez, you can talk. I will have the PowerPoint, so you just tell me when to get on. And now we are all with you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Nathanael, for your kind word. It's nice to meet all of you, and I'm more than happy to share my experience after 4 years in Berlin. As Nathanael said, I was the Israeli Defense Attaché to Germany, and I was responsible for all the cooperation between the Israeli Armed Forces and the German Armed Forces. And it was a great privilege to me to represent my country, but it was a great privilege or great opportunity to me to meet first-time German friends and to ask them what the father or grandfather does in the Holocaust. So I try to understand, to give you the opportunity to understand how the Germans feel right now regarding the Holocaust. Nathanael, please show my presentation.
Okay.
And it's around 10-15 minute presentation about what I found and what is my experience.
Just a minute,
Please.
Problem. Just a minute. No, it's not this one.
Perfect.
Now you see the presentation?
Yes, sure, I see it.
Okay. Everyone see the presentation? Ima, רואים את זה?
כן, כן.
Okay.
So this is me. I was the Israeli Defense Sharon Demish is the man who initiated the Stolperstein, the memory stone in Berlin, and you can find this stone all over the Europe. Next. Okay. When I start my mission as an Israeli Defense Attaché, I really remember my first day in the office. And I think the second day I have the meeting in the German Ministry of Defense. It was the first time that I come to this building to meet my colleagues and my partner for the next 4 years. And when I arrived to the German Minister of Defense, you can see from the left side, the left picture, you can see the entrance of the Minister of Defense. This is the original building that Hitler used to stay and to control the war. And you can see this is the entrance. When I entered to the main building, I found a area, and you can see a statue of Colonel von Stauffenberg. Von Stauffenberg, he was one of the men in Valkyrie operation who tried to kill Hitler in the end of the war. And when I saw, I look on this statue, I just think if he really succeed, how many Jewish lives we can live? How many Jewish can live if he really succeed? But I ran to the meeting, and when I start the meeting with my colleagues, it was my first meeting in the German Ministry of Defense. I met 4 officers, and they start to speak with me with a little German, a little English, and they talk and talk and talk, and I cannot really listen to them because my thought was about them. It is the first time that I met German officers. They speak German and English, and I always think what the father of them, what the grandfather really does in the Holocaust. And I feel that I sit together in the same room, in the same office with the children and grandchildren of Nazis. And it was really shocked. I cannot remember nothing after I go out. And I really want to ask them, what your father do? What your grandfather? But I feel uncomfortable. And I leave the meeting. I don't remember nothing of this meeting. I just understand that I really want to learn about what they feel, what the family feel after the Holocaust. Next slide. In this picture, you can see the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin. The Holocaust Memorial in Berlin is located in the center of Berlin, very close to the Reichstag, very close to the Brandenburg Gate. It's one of the very touristic place in Berlin. The memorial is huge. It's a huge ground. It's, I think, 200 on 200 square meter. And you can see all the gravestone that remember symmetry. It's a huge memorial, and when you go inside, you feel uncomfortable, you feel dark, you feel very hard. And it's a very impressive memorial site in the center of Berlin. The most interesting issue is about what time it's found. Next slide, please. You can see, as I told you, it's a huge memorial, more than 2,711 gravestones in this memorial site. But it's very unbelievable that it's founded in 2005, 60 years after the Holocaust. And I was quite shocked because when first time I visited in this place, in this memorial, it was very impressive, very touched. But I asked why I ask myself and I ask my friends how it's happened that this is the first memorial site that founded only 60 years after the Holocaust. And I must tell you, until 2005, you cannot find any memorial site in Berlin. Of course, not in East Berlin, not in East Germany, even then in West Berlin and in West Germany, you cannot really find memorial site. And I was very sad to learn about this fact. Once, you know, at the Israeli Defense Attaché, I invited for a lot of reception. And after 3 months in my duty, the German army invited me for a reception. And in this reception, I met a professor from Hamburg University. And when the professor met me, he told me, Erez, Colonel Katz, you are the Israeli attaché? I said, yes, I'm the Israeli attaché. And then he told me that he teach about the Holocaust in Hamburg University, and a lot of students attend to his lectures. And I told to this professor, Professor, I'm quite surprised, and I'm very happy to know that the young German really want to learn about the history. He told me, yes, my lecture is full of students. And he told me, I tell you one story that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. When I come to my lecture in the university, the room was full of students, more than 250 students in my lecture. And before I start my lecture about the Holocaust, one student, she she said to me and to all the students, and she want to tell us something from her last weekend. And then the professor gave to this young student, lady, to speak. And then she started to cry, and she was unable to talk. Couple of minutes until she relaxed, she drinks some water, and then she tell to the professor and to all the students, she tell them, listen, my friends, in the last weekend, my grandpa, he became 96 years old. He was very sick in the hospital. And before he will die, the doctors called to all the family to say goodbye to my grandfather. And then all the children, all the grandchildren come to the hospital. And then she said, Grandpa said, my children, my family, I want to tell you something before I close my eyes. And then it was quiet in the room. And then her grandfather said, I was a Nazi. I killed a lot of Jewish in the Holocaust, and then he died. And then the professor told me, this lady, this student, she was really crying, and she said, I really love my grandfather. I really like him. How can I live now with this new information? She was really shocked because nobody told her. She never know, and she never can imagine that her grandfather she so like and she really loved, he is really a Nazi. And she was very cry, and she cannot say. And this small story that the professor shared with me come to my mind, and I try to understand that most of the young people who live in Germany doesn't have a clue what the fathers and grandfathers really does in the Holocaust, because they shame what they do, and they don't want to tell this story. Next. So what I learned, and you know, you can see the Holocaust Memorial, they built it 60 years later, and I tried to learn why it's take a lot of time to the German people to remember the Holocaust and to do some memorial site in Germany, in Berlin, and all over the Europe. And of course, I try to understand. I have to this, I understood that they start to build a project, memorial project, only in 2005 on. And this is because of mainly three explanations. The first explanation, it's the third generation. The first generation, the grandfather who come back to the world, they was really shame about what they do in the Holocaust. So they didn't really know, they don't want to remember what they do. The children shame about what their father do in the Holocaust, and they decided to be quiet and not to do something. The third generation was feel guilty and understood that they need to do something to remember the Holocaust. This is the main reason of the story that I tell you about the student. She was shame about what her father does, and the third generation take decision to do something to remember and to commemorate the Holocaust. The second explanation about why they start to do these projects, memorial project, is because of the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. The German government and the German people try to want to show to the world that they want to be a liberal country, they want to take responsibility, and after the wall fall, they start a lot of projects and they initiate a lot of projects to remember the Holocaust. I want to show you a couple of examples about how the German people, the German government and the German people do from 2005 until now. Next slide. You can see in this slide, you can see the Holocaust commemoration projects in Germany, in all over Germany. You can see the stone, the Stolperstein stone, the memorial stone that Gunter Demnisch initiated. You can see the stone. Until now, they have in Germany more than 1,000 villages that 1,000 villages and cities that you can find this stone, the memorial stone, the Stolperstein stone. Until now, Gunther initiate more than 60,000 stones and around 18 in around 18 different countries in Europe. You can see in this slide a lot of projects that the young generation initiate in Berlin, in a lot of cities all over Germany and in all over Europe. You can see Berlin Auschwitz. This is the Gleis 17 in Berlin. This is the place that the train goes from Berlin to Auschwitz, and they make in this train memorial site. So a lot of projects start to initiate the young generation after 2005. To conclude my small presentation, this is the last slide I want to share with you. Next. This is the main, I want to share with you what I see after 4 years in Berlin. And after I met a lot of young people and a lot of officers in German armed forces. The first topic that I found that a large part of the German people lives with a shame and with feeling of guilty. A lot of German officers that I met want to talk about the Holocaust, want to remember, and most of the people that I met really feel uncomfortable, feel shame, and feel guilty. As you see from my short presentation, they start to remember very late. The first memorial initiated in 2005. But since 2005, you can find hundreds of memorial sites in Berlin and all over Germany. And I think we really need to appreciate it. And as I mentioned, the memorial site is all over Germany and all over Europe. I feel that you can see from this different memorial that the young generation really want to take responsibility and they really want to deal with their past. Of course, the young generation feel less committed, and that's why we need to push them to continue with this different of project, because it's very important that we remember the Holocaust not only in Israel, not only in United States of America. It's very important to remember the Holocaust in Germany, in Berlin, in the place that it really started. And I think we are, as an Israeli, as a Jewish, it's our duty to remember and not forget, and to take a lot of measures to make sure that even in Germany, they will continue to remember the Holocaust and they will continue to take responsibility about their past.
Eric, thank you.
If you have any
very much.
comment, I'm more than happy.
Yeah, so thank you very much for your presentation. Short, but it seems that you did a lot of work behind it, and you have a lot of experience, 4 years in Germany and Berlin. Any comments or any remarks or any things to add or to disagree? It's also, it's an open dialogue here. So if anyone wants to say something, this is the time. Just open your microphone and say that, or ask Erez. Everything is open, yeah?
Thank you for doing that presentation.
Okay.
Welcome. Yeah. It was not easy for me. My father was born in Romania during the war, and it was not easy for me to be Israeli officer in Germany, and it was not easy for me to listen to the German national anthems and to salute. It was not easy at all. But because I met a lot of German and I learned they really feel uncomfortable, they really shame, and they really want to speak about it, and I really appreciate. And I always feel that we cannot forget, but in the same time, I understand that most of the German that I met was born 10, 20 years after the Holocaust. So they personally are not guilty. But of course, Germany as a nation, as a group, should take responsibility. But as a private people, they was born 20 years after. So personally, they are not guilty for me, and I can really make friends in the new generation of the German. Thank you for this.
Much argument about the Stolperstone, that many people object to it, or many cities object to having it because they step on the stones and they step on the names.
Yeah, one of the women, she really was against this project. She is the Mrs. Knobloch. She is the chairman of the Jewish community in Munich, and she is, of course, Holocaust survivor. And she said, when you put the stone on the side, people can walk on this, and it's not polite, it's not nice. But Gunther tell her that the stone is gold, and it's become like a sun. And when you see the stone, you just stand, look down, and show appreciation and remember. And Gunther said, my wish is to remember the names And I think if we remember the names where they live, this is my vision. And still in Munich, there is not too many stone, but they start lately, I think the last year they really start to put some of the stone in Munich, but I really can understand Mrs. Knobloch, but I think it's a really interesting project and we need to salute Gunther about what he's doing to remember our people, our brothers who died in the Holocaust.
Okay, I think there was an offer also, an idea to do that in Gunzenhausen, and then as far as I know, the council didn't want it, maybe from these reasons or from other reasons, but we can check. Richard, you raised your hands. Come on, Richard, say your words.
Yeah, hello, how is everybody? My mother survived the concentration camps. So I'm a firstborn American. And I've been going back to Germany to speak to students in the high schools. In last November, one of the people that I know in Germany wanted to put on a play about Germany and the Nazi Zeit and the survivors. My mother had written a diary of the time when she was in the concentration camps. And I never knew about the diary, but I found it after she died when I was cleaning out her personal belongings. So the play was about the diary of my mother. And when I was in Germany in November and the play was put on, and then I made a PowerPoint presentation afterwards, people that are of our generation, I'll say people that were born in 1945 and later, one man in particular came up to me after my PowerPoint presentation and said to me in German that he insists upon shaking my hand. So I introduced myself and I shook his hand, and he said to me that he felt extremely bad that he has German blood running through his veins because his father was a Nazi in the town where my mother was born, and his father was responsible for collecting many Jews and sending them to the camps. So as Eretz is saying, I believe too, and have seen firsthand, that many Germans are shameful and feel responsible, even though they were not alive during the NS Zeit, but they have very bad feelings about what their parents or grandparents had done. So I agree very much with what Eretz says. And I too know about the Stoppelsteiner project, and I know Gunter Demmig. And I also know, as Eretz said, that there are many towns and cities in Germany that refuse to install the Stoppelstein. But some cities have decided upon another project, and they put up memorial posts, something like a banner, a copper banner around a post that's installed at the sidewalk, so people don't step on the stones the way some people feel the stones can be disrespected. So I think there is a growing presence of people being shameful and wanting to be educated about what their parents or grandparents had done during the NS Zeit.
Thank you, Richard. Where's your mother comes from? Not from Gunzenhausen?
No, my mother was born in Bad Wildungen in Hessen, but my great-grandmother on my father's side comes from Gunzenhausen.
Okay.
So both my parents are Yekis.
Yekis, yeah. Okay. Okay, any more comments or questions or anything to say to Erez or what Richard said just now? Yes, Johnny.
Erez, as a military attaché in Berlin, do you feel that post-war Germany enabled Israel's survival militarily through arms deals and financial support? And you think this was a compensatory attitude to make up for what happened in the past in the Holocaust?
You ask about the cooperation right now between the two armed forces?
Even earlier. I'm not talking just about the Dolphin submarines. I'm talking earlier.
I think, you know, a lot of generals that I met feel uncomfortable and feel shame. But I think the cooperation that we have right now, it's of course based on the history, but I think, and most of the Germans really want to cooperate with us because we have the high technology and the high experience armed forces. The chief of the German army come to Israel to learn how we fight in terror in urban area in Gaza. The chiefs of the German Air Force come to Israel to learn from our Air Force how to attack it in South Lebanon in very complicated area. So of course the wonderful cooperation that we have based on the history, but I think the main issue, they come to learn to Israel and we have more than 150 activities per year between the two armed forces. It's because they know we have very good armed forces. And I'm very proud that now we have a very good cooperation between the armies, Air Force, Navy. Of course, the Holocaust is always in the area. It's always on the table. They always want to speak with us about the Holocaust. And every delegation from Germany, when they arrived to Israel, in the first day, we took them to Yad Vashem. We took them not because we pushed them. They every visit in Yad Vashem. And I think it's very important for all of us, for me and for them. I hope I answered to your questions or to your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to inform you that I had few meetings with the second mayor, Mr. Peter Schnell. Very interesting meetings with him. And Shula and me offered him few ideas, few initiations. And one of them was to open a dialogue group between Gunzenhausen Descendants and Gunzenhausen residents. We'll have eight people from each side, and we'll have two moderators, two group facilitators. And when I talked to him about these ideas, I told him the same like Erez, yeah? I told him, listen, personally, I'm not angry at you because you were born after the war. Just a minute, I'll tell you an amazing story, but just a minute. You were born after the war, but a man is also a culture and a family and a history. And as a nation or as a place like Gunzenhausen, I think you are responsible for what your generations before did. You're not responsible, but it's part of your story. And I think you also have to be in touch with us and to also invest some money. We don't need hundreds and thousands of dollars, but to say, to come from a positive view. And I told him I'm Israeli, and I talk honestly, and I put everything on the table. So he told me, yes, I agree with you, and the council will take responsibility about few of the actions. And in our last meeting, I'll tell you an amazing story. I was asking Mr. Peter, tell me a little bit about your family, about your children, about your wife. So he told me about his family, and then I was asking about his wife. And then he told me that his wife, grandmother, is Jewish. I was shocked, totally shocked. And then I was asking from which side she is Jewish, from her father's side or from her mother's side? So he told me from her mother's side. So I said, can you call your wife? I want to speak for her for a few minutes. So he was calling his wife Eva. I told Eva, can you tell me about your grandmother? So she showed me a picture. She told me all the story about her grandmother. And I told her, Eva, I have to be honest with you. According to Jewish law, Jewish halakha, you are part of the Jewish nation. So she was shocked. And then when I spoke to Mr. Peter, I told him, Mr. Peter, I have to tell you something. Even your children are Jewish according to the Jewish law. So Gunzenhausen is not empty of Jews. And this is a real story, amazing story that happened to me just a few weeks ago. Let's go back to our meeting. So he told me that they will pay for this group, for this dialogue group. So any one of you who wants to participate, we'll have just eight members or 8 people that can join. Doesn't matter from where. So I will send another email message with people to write who wants to join, but anyone who wants to join this group can write me email. That's a good news for the beginning of the relation, not beginning, but maybe going on the relationships between us as a group of Gunzenhausen Descendants, and the council and people who live, like Matthias, of course, but people who live in Gunzenhausen itself. So 2 interesting stories. One about Mr. Peter Schnell's wife, Eva Schnell. And the second one about a new project that we start, which is going to do a dialogue group between some of us, anyone who wants, and the group of residents from Gunzenhausen. So it's a good positive step, and we hope to have much more steps in the future. Anyone wants to say something about this, what I said just now, before we continue?
Yeah, I have one question.
Yeah, Richard.
Is the dialogue group going to be in German or in English?
In English. I don't speak German. I cannot. I speak some Yiddish, but not too much. But it's going to be in English, and we are going to search for residents from Gunzenhausen that speak fluent English. So it's going to be in English.
That's good.
Yeah. How many of you here, raise your hands, who speaks German, apart from Matthias? Richard? No, a lot of you, huh?
Yes.
Shula, Claudia, and Sonia, and Eva. So, and Uri, okay? So we can also open a group in German, but then I cannot be the moderator, you know? So we will see. Okay, so it's nice to see people speak German. Okay. Any more?
Can I tell you about my life in Kenya?
Yeah, just in a minute, Eva. We'll hear you. Yeah, we'll hear your special story. Okay, so Eva, come on, introduce yourself. Where do you live? A little bit about your life story and what's your connection to Gunzenhausen and to your life in Kenya. Okay, Eva, it's your turn.
My mother was born in Gunzenhausen, married my father, who lived in White House near the Czechoslovakian border, and they had a little shop. When it came to the Holocaust, they decided that it was time to leave. My father's brother was already in England, so we came to England, and they applied for us to stay here in England, and this was in May 1939. And the British government said, no, we already have enough of you here, but you can go to our colony in Kenya. And we had never heard of Kenya. Fortunately, my cousin, who was a youngster with an atlas, we looked it up, and that's where we went. So we got the boat from Liverpool, went through the Suez Canal, and landed in Kenya on the 30th of July, 1939. And when the boat docked, we were surrounded on the docks by all black people, and who had never seen black people? Anyway, we got our things, and we went to Nairobi, and there was a Jewish community in Nairobi, and they said, "Oh, you can't stay here. You have to make arrangements with the Kenya government, which was British." And they said, "All right, well, you will have to go farming." We couldn't work in a business in Nairobi. We couldn't speak English, and we couldn't speak Swahili, the African language. So off we went and did farming in this little village called Londiani. And none of our family knew anything about farming, but the sun shone for half the year, and then it rained for half the year, so we learned. our neighbors in 1939, August, September, when the war broke out, were not very friendly because, of course, we were German. But eventually they realized that we were not friends of the Germans anymore. So they helped us with the farming. We knew nothing about this, but we had cattle and we had chickens. And then we grew pyrethrum, which is the little insecticide flower with a little, which we picked and dried and sent to a factory where they made insecticides. And this is where we lived. At the age of 7, I had to go to boarding school because the nearest school was 50 miles away. And we were at boarding school for 3 months, and then we were allowed home for a month. And at the age of 11, we then had to go to secondary school, which was Nairobi, which was 150 miles from our little farm. And this is where I grew up. And after school, at that time, there was no colleges or anything for any further education. So this is why I came to London, because my uncle, my father's brother, lived here. And then I got a further education. And when I'd finished, I went straight back to Kenya because I didn't like the climate in England. And I worked there for a little while. And that was the story of our family.
Okay, so you speak Swahili? You can speak Swahili?
Oh yes, we speak Swahili.
Can you say us a sentence in Swahili?
Jambo sana, habari yako. And you would say, Missouri sana. And I said to you, hello, how are you? And you said, you're fine. And I said, well, that's very good.
Okay, and during your time in London, what were you doing during the years in London? Or when did you come back to England after going back to Kenya?
I did my studies, and then I went back. I went back to Kenya, and while I was here, I met a man who became my future husband. So after a little while, I came back, and we got married here.
And during your lifetime, what was your field of working? What did you work? Which field? What did you do during your years in England for living?
Oh, I did secretarial and business studies.
Okay. And where do you live in London? You live in London today?
I lived in London, yes.
Which neighborhood?
Because my uncle lived in London. So there was a Jewish hostel in London where I went first. And I lived there for a little while, and all Jewish, we were all sort of 16, 17, 18 years old. So I lived there, and then I went to work for 6 months to practice what I had learned, and then I went back to Kenya.
Okay, thank you very much for your amazing story. Now we are waiting for, you can clap hands to Eva. Amazing story. It's interesting to hear more. You show it also in a very nice way. Now we are searching for the Jew in India, okay? We still are searching for the Jewish family who came from Gunzenhausen to India. I hope they will talk once, but let's see in the future. I want to share you also another idea we have in the future. Maybe it will be in October or November. Normally, I know from my Polish side that we go every year or 2 years to the town in Poland, and we have like a weekend in the town together with the Polish people. We call that Shabbaton, like a Jewish weekend. And now, because we don't go, we cannot fly, most of us, we are planning to do that through Zoom. So there's also an idea, and I shared also Mr. Peter Schnell, the second mayor, to do like a tour in Gunzenhausen, but through Zoom, to take 2 or 3 days, 4 or 5 hours each day, and to plan a whole program as if we are touring Gunzenhausen. So we will have a tour in the town with students and camera. We'll have a meeting with the mayor. We'll go to the archive. We'll go to the Jewish cemetery together. We'll have some ceremonies together. So this is just the beginning of the idea, and we have to deal with that with the council. He said it's very interesting and they are interested in that also. And if this is going on, we will update you or inform you through the email. So this is my planning for today's meeting. Now it's the time for you, if anyone wants to say something, to suggest something, to comment on anything that was said in this meeting. So you can say, and now it's open for you as a group, for you as personal, to say whatever you want to share. Shula, come on. Open your microphone.
Is that better?
Now, yeah.
Okay. Is Erez still there?
I don't see. Maybe he went. I don't know. I can call him. Maybe.
No, that's okay. I can do it some other time. I just wanted to ask Erez something, but I also would like to ask Eva something. Your name is Eva, right? From Kenya? Hilo Shomat.
Eva. Shula wants to ask you. Your name is Eva, of course. Yeah, her name is Eva. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know what happened here to my.
No, we hear you, Shula. We hear you.
Okay. So Eva, your story is wonderful. And I want to ask you, Eva.
Yes.
How many Jews do you think went to Kenya?
There was already a Jewish community in Nairobi who had come from South Africa. And that was quite a big community. I think when we came from Germany on that boat, I think there were probably not more than about 15, 20 families, or not that many.
And you didn't live near each other?
We couldn't live, no, because when you had to go farming, you were out in the countryside. We were 50 miles from the nearest town. Our neighbors were all not Jewish. They'd all been there before. There were several Scottish neighbors, but we couldn't live near each other because the farms were
I understand. But so how did you keep your Jewish identity? You went to a boarding school. There were probably no Jews there.
I went to boarding school.
But there was no Jews. So how did you remain a Jewish woman?
My father went to the headmaster and said he does not allow me to go to church, which we did every Sunday. So the headmaster said, well, that's okay, but if she stays in the school, and there were 5 of us, then somebody from the community in the town has to come and sit with us, because 7, 8, 9-year-olds, we couldn't be left alone in the grounds of the school when there was nobody there. So, and because of all this, I mean, we were Jewish, and we were always Jewish, and we would not take part in prayers. They went to church every Sunday, and they had their prayers, and we never took part in that. So because of this, we always knew we were Jewish.
I understand.
I mean, we had no rabbi for 20 years.
And did your father stay on the farm all his life?
Yes. Unfortunately, Kenya is a very sort of, we lived at a high altitude, and he eventually had heart trouble and he passed away.
I have been to Kenya, and I've been to Nairobi, and I've been to the synagogue there.
Who did you see in Nairobi?
Did
you meet any of the community in Nairobi?
I did in the synagogue. I went to the synagogue. It was across the street from the hotel. And anyhow, it seemed like it was a very lively place.
It was.
It was I don't know, it gave me a lot of hope that there can be a continuing Kenyan community and not just one that disappears when the refugees either leave or die off. I think there really is a community there.
Okay.
My oldest school friend, who I met at the age of 7 in the Kuru school, now lives in Tel Aviv, and we speak every 2 or 3 weeks, and we write emails and all the time.
Okay, but let's go back from Nairobi and Kenya to Gunzenhausen, Germany, and to our meetings here this afternoon or this morning, depends where you come from. And anyone wants to say anything or to share anything from this meeting or from other ideas you have?
Yeah, I would
Okay, Matthias,
like to say something.
Yeah. Everyone knows Matthias. Matthias is he comes from Gunzenhausen. He's a pastor in Gunzenhausen, and he's a good friend of mine. And we meet every week together for a meeting. We learn together Judaism. And okay, Matthias, we're with you.
Yeah. So I just want to say something to Shula. Shula, you, after I think it was not the last meeting, but the meeting before, you sent me an email, and you had you did say, if there is anti-Semitism again in Germany, shouldn't the church say something more? And you, as a pastor, shouldn't you go ahead in some way? And then I was sending a mail to you, and I was thinking about that, and it wasn't so easy for me to come to a conclusion, because those things which are in some way anti-Semitistic, they are going to become public. People know about that. And I was wondering, what do I do at all? And then I found one answer, and that's really the way how I try to go. And this is to live or to work pro-Semitistic. It's rather hard to react to anti-Semitistic things, which are bad. But when I repeat the bad things, that also has some effects. And the way that I had tried to live during the last years is just to do pro-Semitistic things. Of course, I could continue and could try to take up the work of Emmy and to find into this group and into this road they had been started to build. And I could try to continue walking this road. And we did it in different ways. And I think also what Nathaniel is going to do with Peter Schnell and this Gunzenhausen Descendants and Residents group is actually a work of pro-Semitistic work. And this is actually the way I found for me to do and to go. And this is also the things I try to support when I meet people around me. I try to support them or to encourage them to go pro-Semitistic ways and to do things in this direction.
Okay, thank you, Matthias. Thank you very much for sharing that
Thank
with
you.
us.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, you are here also the representative of Gunzenhausen in this meeting this afternoon. Okay, any more comments? Anyone wants to say something before we finish?
I just want to thank you for doing this. It's very nice to whatever. I feel this connection. My father was born in Gunzenhausen and came to the United States in 1934, and anyway, had 4 kids, and I'm the youngest of the 4, and I'm calling in from California. So anyway, thank you for doing this.
Okay, thank you,
Second,
Sonia.
I think, Nathaniel, the amount of time that you've spent on all of this is fantastic, and I think it's really appreciated.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. It's touching my heart when you say these words because it's like an echo for my activities. So thank you very much. I'll send an email about the dialogue group. So anyone who wants to participate in that, I think we'll have 8 for the first time. We'll have 8 people can join us. Doesn't matter who are you and from where are you. Just answer the email. And any more activities we'll share through the email. If anyone wants to write or to suggest any idea, so you can write to me or me and Shula, you can write emails to us or call us. And I think we'll finish for tonight. We are interesting hour, beginning with Erez, very interesting presentation. And then the amazing story of Eva. It was really interesting and touching your story. Amazing, Eva, thank you very much. And thank you very much for everyone joining this meeting from around the world. And see you next time. I think our next meeting will be at 13th of September. It will be just a week before Rosh Hashanah. So we can also bless each other for Happy New Year. Maybe we'll eat an apple with honey also together. And between then and now, everyone can write email or send WhatsApp, whatever, which way it's easy for you. So have a good vacations, I hope, or good staying at home, depends each country, you know, with the coronavirus. So, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you or this afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And I'll send the recording of the meeting you will get in the mail.
Thank you, Nathaniel, for all your hard work. Appreciate
okay,
it.
Karen, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Night, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Shalom lehitrot.
Shula litrot, bye-bye.
להתראות.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Matthias, we'll be in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
Eva,
Yes.
I hear you stay. We lived in London for 2 years. We lived in Edgware.
No, I don't live in Edgware.
No, I lived in Edgware for 2 years.
Oh, no, I now live in Woodford.
Woodford, okay.
Yeah.
I as a child, I was in London for 2 years with my family. So it's good to hear your English accent, yeah? I like the English accent, better than the American one. My grandmother came from Gunzenhausen, yeah? My grandmother, her father was a physician in Gunzenhausen. His name was Karl Rothschild. He was like a general practitioner. So he did everything, you know, he gave birth for women. He helped everything, also German people from Gunzenhausen, and they left to Munich in 1935. And my grandmother, through the Kinderdtransport, you know what's the Kinderdtransport, yeah?
Yes.
She came to England, to Hendon for a year in 1939, and then her parents managed to escape from Germany and to take her to Boston, USA, to Boston, and she became American. And after 10 years, she immigrated to Israel. Her name was Hannah, or Helen, or Hannah.
Well, it was Hazel who organized this.